Why do I keep on using Viva Zen? Because it works.
We're discontinuing the 250th anniversary American flag.
Cocksuckers, get off this fucking
Every flag
shit.
that's
Like doing the best they can, but very liberal, very angry. You know, oh, you're gay, you're bi, you're trans. They're trying to make me not. You can't. You know what I mean? And at one point, I was getting crucified because I was like, "How's he doing?" It's not a he, it's a she. And I'm like, "Dude, I'm doing the best I can."
Yeah.
Like you got to see that I'm not doing it in a way that it's negative, but I definitely spent a long time only around those people. And then when I got sober and started to like, I was like, oh wow, sleeping with everybody's not actually healthy. That's bad. And I didn't know. And then we're talking 2 years where if I'm not hanging out with those people, I've pushed these other people away. So I'm by myself. And I'm getting sober. It was super scary. At one point I was like, even you. First time I came here, I was like, why? Somebody DM me and was like, don't go on that show. I didn't even know it was a show. I was like, they want me to come? I like talking to people. And you gotta listen. This is what he said. He's a racist. He's a homophobe. I'm like, really? Why would he have me on? That's a weird. Like, he knows I'm not gonna go, yeah, man, don't say that. Like, I don't want to do that. And I said, got any video? He's like, yeah. And then he sent me 2 videos. And I went,
What were the videos?
where's the bit? He said something about men not paying for dinner, and something about how men are not men anymore. About something about you need to take care of your
Masculinity or
something about masculinity. And I was like, wait, where's the racist bit in that? or homophobic? Like, is it homophobic? It just seemed like he thinks we should pay for dinner. Like I didn't really. I'm not catching what you have stated. And then, but it was enough because I owe my fans. You know, as soon as I walked in here, I was like, "Hey man, can I just talk to you for a second?
Yeah.
Before we come up here, because if you're like, yeah, fuck black people, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't want to be in that. And if you were like, yeah, fuck gay people, I'd be like, okay. That's the difference. That my sobriety, my understanding, my constant I've apologized to everybody I've ever known for being angry, quick, and bitter. And if you're not thinking what I'm thinking, then fuck you. That's all I was about. So now I listen to people. I'm friends with Jeff Dye. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
He is not a liberal guy.
No.
And I was on his show, and some of the things that he thought I don't agree with. But it's your opinion, and you don't want anything bad to happen to me. You love your parents, or you want to fall in love with a girl. If you have a kid, you're going to love the kid. Like, we're all the same. It's just this weird, how dare you thing where I'm like, I just don't care anymore. If you say something that's offensive,
so here's
it's your life, dude. Like, I'm not going to jump down your throat.
Here's the saying.
At it.
Everybody lives, everybody is on this beach surrounded by this wall of fire. And you're being told by all these people around you, they're grabbing your arm saying, don't go near the fire. The fire is dangerous. When you finally decide to jump over that wall, you find the whole world and everything was fine the whole time.
Yeah.
So on this side, we've got members of our community who are transgender, gay. One of our regulars, who's a good friend of ours, is gay married. We have no issues with anybody. Like, it's very liberal in a sense. We have a lot of conservatives who are very far right, but it's liberal in the sense that we all hang out together. In fact, there's a guy that everybody who watches the show absolutely hates. You know who I'm talking about? Brian Shapiro.
Yeah, but he's our friend.
But he's a raging liberal TS. He gets beat.
If you're a raging liberal in this room, I can see how that might trigger a few people.
No, but we laugh.
But he's a nice
guy. Phil, they do not get along.
That's the thing that people don't realize. This comedy taught me this. Going on the road, I have people on social media say this, say that. Everybody I meet at a meet and greet after a show, they're awesome.
Yeah.
And you can be like, there's one thing I don't like, or actually, you know what, maybe gay isn't bad. And I'm like, okay, I also understand where you come, your parents. I don't know where you were born. Maybe you were hung out with the people that were like, these guys are bad. Maybe one of them did something bad to you. Everyone has a reason. I just never take it. I was always ready. Like,
well, here, I want to make one point.
Let me
I do that.
I'm going to give you the final
I
thoughts.
go, because are we getting jumped? You got to be ready.
I'm going to say one thing, and then Alex, you can wrap it up. We just we're friends with everybody.
Yeah.
From if like we have friends who are liberals and progressives.
I'm here.
Right. If you're nice to us, we're nice to
Gay
you.
as fuck.
There you go.
I'm here,
That's what I
gay
was
as
saying.
fuck.
If you're nice to us, we're nice to you. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
But take it away, Alex.
And
as
I
we
just
wrap
want to
up.
make this point. I think this would describe Tim's politics, and correct me if I'm wrong. And
He will.
I'm paraphrasing Machiavelli. Is that most people are good, but most people in power are bad because you had to do something bad to get into power. And I think Tim is trying to fight against the power, the man, the people that are trying to hold us back. And so I think that's a better representation of Tim's. If it's a conservative guy that's doing bad, if it's a liberal guy that's doing bad, whatever, we're trying to fight against the people that are in power that are screwing us over.
I don't think most people are good. I think most people are selfish animals that are hell-bent on survival.
I mean, that's a paraphrase of Machiavelli.
We had this wholesome ending, and then Ian's like, "No."
I thought we were in the clear, dude.
It was like the
We gotta
spirit-
get the squirrels. You know what I'm saying?
Spirit has like a good guiding, godlike thing, but the animal body that we inhabit are just devious, murderous.
lizard-
Yeah,
part
it's
of
like
our
when he
brain.
fingerboards, I'm like, I'm gonna punch him in the mouth, and then
But
I'm
he
like,
doesn't.
let him do his gay shit. He's alright.
Yeah, I don't think
Guys,
people are good at all.
We've got to get.
like
okay.
80-90% destructive animals, and we kind of have a tiny bit of control over that.
We got wait. We got to get ready because we're about to we're getting ready for the live show. Cash Brew Coffee. It's going to be fun. We'll carry on the conversation. Smash the like button, share the show. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Who wants to go first? Shots fired.
Primetime Alex Stein. Thank you guys for having me, Tim. It's always a pleasure. A little bit about the immigration, abortion, yada yada yada. But it was always a pleasure. You made me laugh a lot. And I will say this: please follow me on X, AlexStein99. Love you guys. Peace.
Oh, thejasonellis.com for tour dates. I'm a comedian. Sometimes I'm funny. The Jason Ellis Show, patreon.com/EllisMate, and then Horse Force live YouTube show I do every day. I never not do it. Rob Dyrdek came to me in my dreams and told me that if I did it 7 days a week, I would have enough money to buy a horse. And he was right!
Rob do?
Genius.
Rob Dyrdek.
Oh, I don't know Rob.
That guy's like.
You don't know Rob?
Rob,
That's
you
Rob.
do.
No,
Rob
no,
Dyrdek's
no,
like
he
the
doesn't
biggest
understand.
legend of all time.
Who is this guy?
Rob Dyrdek, dude.
I'm Ian
Bro,
Crossland.
he had the
and you
longest
can
running
find me-
MTV show in history.
Who?
Rob
He's
Dyrdek.
done like 11,000 episodes.
didn't have
Oh, actually,
cable.
shout out After Hours with Alex Stein and Real America's Voice.
We didn't have cable growing up. Also didn't have air conditioning. My mother was a bit of a Luddite.
Well, it worked out for you, didn't
Yeah,
it?
it was nice. We had a very stable, loving childhood. Very lucky. So follow me at Ian Crossland on the internet. See you later.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. You can follow me on Patreon as well. That's Phil That Remains. The band is All That Remains. You can check out our music on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora, YouTube, Spotify, and Deezer. Don't forget the left lane is for Crime Carter.
I'm Carter Banks. You can follow me at Carter Banks everywhere and at Carter Banks official everywhere else. Trash House Records on YouTube. I gotta say, this is one of my favorite shows that we've done so far because it's just really funny and a great conversation.
Well, Jason's super funny.
I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out the Kevin Sin Frontera documentary because I feel like we could have put that out there at any
bro.
time.
Let's make him watch it.
He
Make
should.
him watch it on the
He really should because so much
Is that
stuff
6'7"
happened,
Kevin?
dude. Yeah.
Going through like the Darien Gap and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
it was wild.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, looking forward to everything. Let's go.
We'll see you guys tonight at the party. Well, actually, you're there now, I think. Thanks for hanging out.
They can't come back on, right?
Yeah, perfect position.
When you alter the fabric of time, there can be some unpredictable consequences.
already had my money on Knowles before. I should have just kept it. Wait, what? I don't know why.
Ever again of racism, transphobic, and by the way, that is kind of dying right now. We're observing the graveyard of the leftists, the Marxists, the woke terms. There are people on the right who want to see a resurgence, you know, people who claim to be on the right, the Marxist right, largely the Islam supporters, folks like that, the big government supporters who claim to be populist, but really this new form of socialist. But the goal here is to shift that Overton window, because you shouldn't feel bad, you shouldn't be nervous, and you should make no apologies for actually having the views that you do. And Elon Musk is doing that pretty effectively. It's time for the latest installment of Doctors and Engineers.
We don't need your doctors. We don't need your engineers. We don't need your doctors. We don't need your engineers.
I want that black pastor on the show, and I want that guy. Yeah. So, interview with The Economist, Elon Musk. Let's just, simply as possible. He was asked, are you anti-Muslim? Here you go.
Are you anti-Muslim?
I'm against having if people are coming to a country with antithetical views. I am against that.
Me too.
I'm against that. You know, I'm against. I'm against rape and murder. I'm against the imposition of rules and laws that are contrary to what we've come to accept in life. And I think it's a crying shame that the sort of traditional media, like you, don't recognize this.
Yep. You know who doesn't apologize for it? Every single Islamic country that expects you to get in line with their law.
Right.
And their principles, which, just to address what Elon said, does have rape in some form or another, murder in some form or another, as you would recognize it as a Westerner, codified into law. He is not saying all Muslims are rapists. He's not saying all Muslims are murderers. He is saying people who hold antithetical views to the Western world, let's just use the United States, where a woman needs insert X number of witnesses here to willfully admit to rape for rape to actually be charged, otherwise she will be punished. Insert view here of immigrant, they view the murder of an apostate or an infidel, someone who refuses to be subjugated, as ordained by God and it being codified into law. These are laws. These are permissible actions across the Islamic world. People coming from those countries tend to hold those views. Let me give you another example. I'll prove it. People coming from Europe, from the UK, they tend to view it as permissible to arrest people for offensive speech because that's the law of the land from where they come. And Elon doesn't hate Muslims. He even let one of them fly his last rocket. he was too tolerant.
Unless the best, it'll always be the best.
So, just to every now and then reality slaps you in the face. You can go watch the whole interview, and she tries to catch him and do the whole, well, you don't know what I know, and I spent time in the UK, I'm a crusty old hag.
Yeah, she told Elon he can't be talking about and trying to influence, Western European politics because he doesn't live in Europe. Meanwhile, a reporter for The Economist surely would never try to influence American politics.
Right,
or culture.
exactly right, yeah. Well, but we were here first, and you left off, so we feel like we are again, I'm a crusty old hag. Now, every now and then reality slaps you in the face. So The Economist uploaded their Elon Musk interview. Online, YouTube's where I saw it. 10:01 Eastern AM. At 1:30 p.m. Eastern, I believe, this happened in New York City.
And we begin here at 6 with some breaking news. It was a scary scene on the Upper West Side where two men were stabbed in a random attack.
The NYPD says detectives are evaluating whether this could be a hate crime, but emphasize the investigation is still in its early stages.
This man had yelled Allahu Akbar and had taken a screwdriver and stabbed him directly in the chest.
You should have led with that.
He did.
The news reporter
He led with it.
Yeah, he led with it. He led with it. You'd think, right? Like, oh, something happened in New York City. Let's get the details on the ground. Hold on a second. Was Allahu Akbar yelled? Do you think that first anchor didn't know? In other words, there was the selection. I'm not going to include it.
Right.
Why? Why? And you see this all the time. It is relevant. It's not hateful. It's relevant to understand the motive. And one thing I will personally thank Muslims for. I know you never thought you'd see this. I'm very thankful to the followers of Islam for seldom do we have the motive when we are investigating a crime announced before the crime is committed. But Muslims do it very regularly, and so you make the investigation incredibly efficient. I'm very grateful to the Muslim community for yelling, I'm doing this for Allah! It's like, well, good, we don't need Detective Comics on the case.
Yeah, that's like 1/3 of the old detective process.
Yes.
Is motive.
Yeah. Well, maybe you... Allahu Akbar! Tight-lipped, see? Allahu Akbar! Maybe you'll talk downtown! Allahu Akbar!
We may never know what happened.
We may never know what happened on that fateful day in Central Park with the man who wore the towel on his head. That's how we refer to him, man with towel on head, who would yell some strange language, something about Allahu and snacks. By the way, just so you're clear, before we get to the anecdotal, the empirical 198 million Muslims support violence against civilians. Period. Okay? Let's round it up. I'll do that. You guys can criticize me. 200 million. Go check the references. Then you look in 2026, 872 Islamic-inspired attacks globally. Terror attacks globally are the overwhelming majority of them, depending on the year, give or take a few percentage points, Islam.
Jesse, what happened? It's the darndest thing. Walking across the street the other day, and then out of nowhere, a Dodge Magnum plows right into me. Picks me. Should have taken your foundation. What would a multivitamin help with a car crash?
Well, if you think about it, the amount of time it would take you to open the bottle and take your daily dose, put it in your mouth, then chug it down with some water, probably would take about, I don't know, we say 9, 12 seconds. Is that fair?
Sure.
At that point, the car would have been on its way and never would have hit you. You'd be fine.
Like the butterfly effect.
More like foundation destination. Final. I'm Devin Sawa. You'd be the guy from Dawson's Creek who dies first. He was gay.
Okay.
Proven science, zero secrets. That's your foundation. Visit foundationdaily.com today. Subscribe, save 40% off for life.
Maybe he was bi.
That's irrefutable.
Religion of peace, sorry.
Yes, religion of peace.
Just get it right.
But 2026 isn't even over yet.
No, it's not even over
It's
yet.
barely halfway done.
I know. There's going to be quite
So we
a
could
few more.
expect 1,600 by the end of the year.
Well, that's the empirical, but again, you just can't stats. They don't really tell the full story, right? They're lies, damn lies, and statistics, and don't believe your lying eyes and ears.
He's trying to cut his hair off. He's mate, hurry up. Hurry up. He's slicing his hair off here. Hurry up the fuck. Come on, Boston. Listen, Get him! Quick!
I can tell you that we have confirmed reports that prior to him conducting this act of terrorism, he shouted, stated Allah Akbar.
But why?
Así eres tú, porque trabajamos juntos, porque te conozco mucho tiempo, como que...
Accidentally caught on camera.
Perhaps this Allahu Akbar is some secret gang symbol.
We will never know.
This one's kind of funny. Now replace it with Christ is King.
Yeah.
You know what the narrative would be immediately. It just takes one right now. By the way, I like how Elon answered this. She said, "Are you anti-Muslim?" And he goes, "I'm anti anybody that has views that are antithetical to the West coming in." Like he really crystallized it for her. It's not about a religion necessarily. Yes, it does get to that, but I'm against anybody with these views. Deal with that.
Yep.
You can't.
There are a lot of people across the world that wouldn't want an American moving into their country, having kids, them getting into government, and then making guns legal.
Exactly.
They say this all the time about us. Oh, those Americans, they love their guns. Well, yeah, it's enshrined in our Constitution. No, let's do the same thing with rape and murder in other countries. No. That's different.
You know what? Let's not even take the extreme example. Let's take the most mild example. How do you think Americans would be treated as immigrants in any Islamic nation if they said, we're here to use their systems, get in their roles of government, and actually enshrine freedom of speech so that you can criticize the prophet?
Good luck.
Just that. You don't need guns. You should be able to draw a picture. They would be executed. We don't want to let the people who support said execution into this country. Hey, you understand it? Simple? Well, here's the backlash. The Islamic advocates, and many of whom have, grifted their way into the right, AIPAC can go screw themselves with a wire brush. Not a fan of what Netanyahu has been doing. Israel needs to get their act together. Understood? Islam is a problem. The idea that if you have a problem, you must embrace the other. Islam seeks to conquer and or subvert the entire Western world. That's why you see this response to Elon Musk. Anyone who claims to be on the right and says Christians and Muslims are actually very much alike is a liar. They are not your friend. They are trying to lead you astray. Just to be clear. Here's someone on the Elon Musk interview, Mukhtar. Nothing like perpetuating the name stereotype.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is a racist Islamophobe. We all knew it. That's why he funds Tommy Robinson and Rupert Lowe. If you thought that name was good, the next one, Dr. Muhammad, is the next one. Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. Elon Musk is ignorant. I'm going to at-reply him, give him a piece of my doctor mind. He's ignorant when it comes to understanding history and culture. He has built his wealth as a vulture capitalist, and he now uses his wealth to attack Muslims and Islam and supports genocide. Right. Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing. Let's say he's a vulture capitalist. All right, fine. I still would support, I'm not saying it's good, vulture capitalism over conquering and enslaving. The only way that Islam has spread historically, never once peacefully. Conquering, killing, enslaving, imprisoning, raping, and outbreeding. It's the only way that Islam has grown, with one exception, prison. Here's the idiot Sneeko, who, by the way, when you have a head shaped like this, you don't get to continue with this haircut.
If people are coming to a country
like
with
you, I was born here.
antithetical views.
I was born in America, born in New York City.
Let him finish, idiot.
I am against that.
He's talking about me.
The imposition of
He's right on that one.
rules and laws that are contrary to what we've come to accept in the West.
He's so dumb. I could destroy him in a debate, bro. He's so stupid. He's trying to figure out the right-wing X talking points in real time. Antithetical. He's anti-Islam.
Careful, you're telling on yourself.
Is he gonna get taken down from hate speech? He didn't say no.
He's just basically so he doesn't know what Islam is. All he knows
Pause.
is
Do you see what he just did?
sees from
He just told on himself. He said he's trying to come up with the right wing talk. No, that was Sneeko, right? Sneeko, who acted like he was on the right, now he's had a falling out with everyone on the right, and including not necessarily on the right, but Nick Fuentes. I guess they're having a tiff right now. And then he goes on to say, is he going to be removed for hate speech? Which means that to some degree, on some level, he of course does support some type of repercussions or punishment for people criticizing Islam. He has said so in the past. This man has never been on the right. This man has never been conservative. He wouldn't show up to debate me. That offer, by the way, is no longer extended because he chickened out. This is what I'm talking about. People who came in to deceive you, make some money off of you. This is not someone who understands what America is about. I don't care about the laddie and longy as to where he was born. Continue the clip.
wokeness, libs of TikTok, and from Cat Turd on X. That's his idea of Islam. He learned about the Quran from Alex Jones, who says, I read all the hadiths in the Quran. He didn't know anything. That's his idea. It's just Mossad slop and Tommy Rubin stuff.
He was watching along with that, and he goes, "He's talking about me, bro." And right when right after he said that, Elon's like, "Don't like rip and murder." I'm like, oh, he's talking about you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird, dude.
I wouldn't admit to that.
No. I didn't learn anything from Alex Jones on Islam or Elon Musk. Did learn it from Muhammad. If it was a Harry Chapin song, at the end, the son would be calling from college, only he'd be a warlord banging 6-year-olds.
9.
Thighs. And then only real sex when they're 9, because he was a gentleman.
Yeah.
The reporter from I turned out just like you did. Harry Chapin.
I got a 9-year-old too.
Banged a 6-year-old thighs just the other day.
Don't clip that. That's not even fair. We were doing a voice.
And if it doesn't sound like a voice, then it wasn't a voice.
I'm the holiest of prophets. You gotta kill the gays. All right, here's the Economist reporter pressing Elon on other things that he said. And she's a very, here's the fun, and I get it, you can say, because, I mean, look, for crying out loud, I had a flashlight to do Tales from the Crypt. Silliness. You could say this is an unserious program. Granted. But this woman is an unserious person dressed up to present as something that she's not. Watch.
Elon, you have, what is it, close to 250 million followers on X.
Yeah, because
you say things like,
popular guy.
quote, civil war
Popular
in
guy.
Britain is inevitable. Just a question
On the
of
current,
when.
yes.
I mean, when were you last in the UK?
A few years ago.
Exactly.
Have you
so,
been
So
there?
I live there. I'm there the whole time. That is
You
nonsense.
live at a
to-
cloistered existence.
No, I don't actually. And the numbers also disprove what you say.
What
It-
numbers?
all the numbers about crime. London is a much safer city than any city in the United States.
Wrong.
Bullshit.
Violent crime in the UK is not where you think it is. In fact, it's
Wrong, you dumb
you've
cunt.
painted, and because you have so many followers, so many Americans believe it. A kind of view that Europe and the UK are kind of, overrun with terrifying Muslim immigrants. There's rape on every corner. There's
Pretty
this
much.
civilizational
I haven't
destruction.
said any of those things. If you have a large and rapidly growing group of people whose beliefs are antithetical to Western beliefs, at some point there will be a reckoning. They will try to implement their views, and those who oppose it will oppose it, and that's what you call civil war.
I actually often find that Elon Musk is not particularly articulate off the cuff. I think he did a much better job here than he usually does, and he deserves some credit. By the way, Tim, grab the wide shot where you can see her and him and just get still frame that. I'm going to go to it in a second. So just to reiterate what he said or to undergird it, a new study came out, more than 1/3 Britons agree that, quote, the growth in the Muslim population poses a foundational threat to UK culture, yeah? Then you look at demographic shifts in the UK from 2011 to today. It's gone up 50% from 2.7 million to 4 million. Combine that with the numbers that 200 million Muslims worldwide support violence against civilians. You look at the global terrorism. You look at, I would even say, far more concerning when she goes, you're saying, they're all rape, it was rape on every corner and murder on every corner. I didn't say any of those things. Let me make it worse, though, and I'll just do it with the
Jesus,
truth.
tells on
You don't need to
yourself.
say rape on every corner, but if I was Elon Musk, I would say, well, no, but your government aided and abetted and covered up migrants raping young women, and were not held accountable for hundreds of thousands. So I think it's worse. You could have said that. Well, tell that to my Spice Go platform shoes. That's why I asked for the screen grab, Tim. I'm a serious journalist. Everybody in the world, spice up your lives.
If you want to be my lover, you got to ask my Muslim husband.
It's also interesting she went to things that are not indicators of civil war.
Right.
Elon Musk is not saying, hey, you have high crime in the UK right now, and that's going to lead to civil war, or hey, there's rapists on every corner, and that's going to lead to civil war. What he's saying is you have an invasion. You have a culture coming in trying to replace yours. The government is aiding and abetting that. The people have been voicing their concern and fighting back to no avail, and now they get to see video after video after video of the other parties being prioritized in the Novak case where he died, and somebody's head being sawn off. They get to see that, and that's what leads to civil war. She addressed none of that.
Yeah. Let me really simplify this argument. Everything you just said is correct. Here's how you know it'll lead to civil war. Every single time historically, Muslims have reached a majority of a country or gotten to the point where they can attain power, it's war.
They do.
Are there any exceptions? No. That's it. Hey, do you like what you saw? I don't know how, because it's on YouTube and we have to cut all the good parts out. So you should tune in live weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern on Rumble. We can still speak freely and even use words like and get.
What?
If you're bothered by an age gap of over 5 years, then steer clear of this app. The young women here specifically.
My dad would get home at 4 and start fucking drinking.
Garcia's hurt bad. Strickland,
Laying in bed once and being a kid crying your brains out, listening to your mom, like, oh, I hope my mom doesn't die tonight. I hope my mom doesn't die tonight.
Anthony Hernandez on the ropes in round 3. The Colts. Sean's Fluffy. Sean's all over him. And that's it. There it is. Sean.
When you have like a dirty, nasty, brown, fucked up pillow, you're laying in bed, like hearing your dad, like, I'll fucking kill you, like all night long. You're just like, you're hearing this shit. And these are my earliest memories. Like, why would God do this to me?
You know, Sean, I'm a fan, and I need you to sign something, but it's probably not going to be the typical thing you sign. I love that you got kicked out at Trump's 80th birthday party.
Oh, let's go, man. I remember like wanting to die before I knew what it was. I don't know what it's like to be normal and then watching your buddy's head get blown off. Like, I don't know what that's like. I don't know what kind of that does to the brain, you know?
It does less to the brain than what happened to you.
A dramatic exit caught on video, showing UFC's reigning middleweight champion being seized by U.S. Marshals and Park Police.
I go back to school again in like 10th grade. I do another fucking hate crime. I get fucking kicked out. So during all this, I'm just really pissed off, angry. I start training now. Hey, what's up, guys? Sean Strickland. You can watch my episode early on Vigilant Elite. My mom brings me to a gym. I start training. I fucking love it. Training to me was the only time in my life I've ever been happy. Like, the only time in my life I've ever been happy was like leaving out of the fucking bloody nose. I'm all fucked up and like, I love this. Like, I don't know what this is, but I'm happy. My math teacher, history teacher, Miss Wadges, she looked at me and she's like, Sean, they build prisons for people like you. Absolutely right, 100%. Like, after I look back, I'm like, yeah, you're 1,000% right. Like, without fighting, the best thing you could have done for me is put me in a cage and said, don't come out.
As soon as he finds a weakness, he begins to chip at it.
Oh, he's still being told that Strickland asks Gilbert Burns' son to move. Oh, and
wow. Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
Out of nowhere. That's kind of crazy.
If it wasn't for fighting, dude, like, I always say, like, I would have been institutionalized for the rest of my life. Could not stop thinking about it. Like, driving down the highway thinking about it, you start like really like making peace with the idea that like what is better, whatever happens is better than now.
But you have to allow yourself to enjoy life too, man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like you have to give it a chance.
If I'm like watching a fucking sunset, if I'm like getting a cup of coffee, like I just...
That's because your mind's racing, you can't sit with yourself.
Girl named Jackie, saved my life, Jackie, thank you. Put the round in it, I spin it, I'm just like talking to her. What are the odds? Like 1 in 6. I cock it back, dude, and she starts fucking crying, grabs the gun out of my hand. Says, Sean, don't you fucking ever do. If you do, I'll leave you.
Well, dude, I mean, do you ever think about why you're here? Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, I mean, we're talking about God and, you know what I mean, agnostic and all these things. And, I mean, and why would God allow, you know, you to go through that as a kid? Well, dude, look at what you're talking about, man. And look how influential you are now. What do you think?
I think I got a new nightstand gun.
Anybody who watches
Yeah, your
MMA
nightstand
affiliated
gun.
with MMA, dude, they all look up to you, man. All these kids look up to you.
Well,
And we just went over.
The sad thing is, like,
Look,
I
hear
saw-
me out though. And we just went over how many kids experience this shit, and they have nobody to look up to, and you're the fucking guy,
I think
man.
it's 1 in 4.
You're the guy who made it out of that. Look at what you made out of yourself. Dude, you're a huge influence to kids that are going through that, and they fucking see you, dude, and then they know there's a way out.
Yeah.
Whereas you didn't know there was a way out, man. Well, now these kids can look at you and they can say, holy shit, like, that dude went through that. Maybe it was worse than what I went through, and if he went through that, then I could fucking get out of this. And that's how God works, dude. That's how he works.
Like if you put your hand right here, and somebody has a good jab, you put your hand, like it happens so fast that you can't physically, like your brain doesn't operate at a fast enough speed. I cannot tell you, I am so fucking lucky. I'm so lucky, dude. Like if I go back and I look at all my life from like the fucking revolver to almost shooting the guy, and even so much other than that, like you want to talk about God. Like I am so lucky because if any one of these 1,000 events happened any other way, I would not be here today. It's a different kind of peace that you don't get from sex, from violence. Like it's like it's a feeling that you get that feels real.
It's
real.
God, bro.
All right, speaking of Sean 9, let's get it right here.
It's nice and compact. You can still fit up to 15 cards.
This is the best.
Nice and compact. You can still fit up to 15 cards plus cash in here at the same time. So it is kind of the best of both worlds. You guys can even...
That they had to do. And so, but if they were faithful to that task, first instance. And so their first experience in their will, it wasn't their first choice because it was something which the will just naturally gravitated towards because it was so beautiful. That's in their first instance of their creation. Because remember, they're in the Avum, which has a sequence of events. So they have that's the first instance. Because they saw that, they also were in that same thing. They also saw if they were faithful, they would get to see God face to face and be happy for all eternity. But if they rejected God, they would be damned in hell and miserable for all eternity. So they knew what the punishment was going to be like. Then they have absolute clarity about that. It's not like human beings where sometimes it's a little hazy for us. It was absolutely clear. The second instance is then in the second instance, St. Thomas says, they looked at intellectually, they could see the temptations, what all the other angels were going through. Every single intelligent being, in order to be in the presence of God, has to go through a test. And the test that the angels had is they were created with a set of perfections, but they could see higher perfections above them. And
they could see that having those perfections would be actually a really good thing, but in order to have that perfection, they would have to reject their assigned task because it's not part of their nature, it's part of something else. And so when they saw that perfection, that's at that point that they had to perform an act of sacrifice. They either had to sacrifice the desire for that perfection that they saw that they would like to have in order to remain faithful to the task that God had told them that they had to do. And so, but if they were faithful to that task, what they would get is the beatific vision, which is above any perfection that they could possibly have. And so that was their actual test. So
that created jealousy.
In a sense, not in the sense that they didn't have those kinds of emotions that we have, but they saw that perfection and what it would be like to have it would be a wonderful thing. But they had to be willing to sacrifice that lesser created good to ultimately end up seeing God face to face, which is the greatest of the highest good, the greater good. And we can kind of return to it because that's the same problem we have with human beings, the same thing we live out every single day. But we have to sacrifice every single day in order to achieve the greater good. But they saw that greater good. So that's what they saw intellectually. So they even saw Satan's temptation. And they knew, or Lucifer's temptation, and they knew that if they chose to reject their assigned task and and choose to just desire this thing, they were never going to get it, but just to desire it, then they knew they would be under Satan. So they saw that whole complexity, and then they made their choice. And so with them, they're very different from us than human beings are. The reason God has mercy on human beings is because we're stupid. No, it's true. We as human beings, we make decisions, and then, afterwards we're like, oh, that was a mistake, I shouldn't have done that. And that's why God has mercy on us. So if we're sorry for it, God will actually, have mercy for us. But with the angels, they're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know the full ramifications of it. So when they make their choice is all in, and their will becomes completely fixed on that choice, whether it's good or bad. And this is why even in session, demons will say, yeah, it was a bad choice, but I'd still do it again, because their wills become fixed in that. So they make their choice, and then the third instance, St. Thomas says, is because unlike human beings, we can make stupid choices, but then we can kind of start getting our act together later. God gives us time to work through that process, and then at a certain point when we die, it becomes fixed, and then he either condemns us or he brings us into heaven. So for us, it takes us time to work out our salvation, as St. Paul says. Fear and trembling, work out your salvation. So it takes us time. Whereas the angels, it's a one-shot deal. And so once they make that choice, their will becomes completely fixed. And so St. Thomas says in the third instance, then God levies judgment. Just like all human beings have to go before Christ and he judges us, all of them were judged by the second person of the Trinity as to what their condemnation would actually be or their reward in heaven. And so they're immediately damned or they're immediately taken into heaven and see God immediately.
How do we know this? I mean, some of this is not in the Bible, correct?
Some of it, parts of it are not, but parts of it actually have to do with two forms of knowledge that the church has, of how these things actually work. The second component has to do with the collective experience of exorcists for 2,000 years. Because my experience as an exorcist is not any different from the exorcists in the 1st century AD. And so how demons talk and what their psychology is. So if you read St. Thomas, it's all based on theological reasoning, but it's also based on a lot of scripture, but then also the mystical experiences, but then also just the church's collective experience in actually dealing with them.
Recorded information.
Exactly.
Let's go back into the fall. Did they all fall at one time?
Yeah, it's all done at the instant. They all fall in that second instance.
What did that look like?
Well, scripture, the description in the book of Revelation is, I saw Satan fall like lightning. So it was just this boom, everything had shifted and changed instantaneously in the experiences and the lives of the angels. So either the angels that did the good, that chose to do their assigned task, their will became fixed in the good. And then, of course, they got to see God right away. But then the angels, they fell. And according to the fathers of the church, and it's actually true. By the way, in session, I've told demons, I command you to consider, to weaken them. I command you to consider your first instance of delight that you had. Because that, when they felt that joy and that delight that they had, crushes them now because it's so painful for them to consider how joyful it was in that moment. So you actually see these things kind of playing out, but they also will. Some of them will actually, under certain circumstances, God will compel them to reveal what their judgment that they underwent by God, and so you find out what those actual things actually are in relationship to it. So it's this massive shift, and like lightning falling.
Did angels from every rank structure fall?
We know from the lowest 8 ranks that there were ones that fell from those. There is some debate about whether one fell from the seraphim or not. Thomas Aquinas says they didn't. A majority of the theologians said that from that top rank they didn't fall. It was just the ones from cherubim on down.
Because there was nothing to look up to other than God.
Basically. And for St. Thomas, it was that they saw God, and in their first inclination was to love him, that they couldn't. It was because of the strength of their charity or love for God that they just did what he asked.
Are there still angels falling today?
No, so that all the angels, since there's no more creation of any angels, and since they all went through the first 3 instances together, none of them are falling now. So they don't, it's not like you have an angel that ends up later falling.
Do we have numbers on each side?
According to the interpretation of the fathers, based upon what's in the book of Revelation, there's a reference where the dragon sweeps a third of the stars down by his tail. That has been interpreted universally by the patristics, that is the fathers of the church, and also theologians throughout time, as referring to a third of the angels fell.
Can angels redeem themselves?
No.
Demons, I mean.
Yeah.
Demons.
Once their will becomes fixed in evil, it's irreparable. It can never change.
Do you think they regret it?
It reminds me of a politician, you'll remember who this is, when he said, "I did not have sex with that woman, so-and-so." He regretted getting caught. He didn't regret the action. And it's the same thing with them. They have remorse in the sense of it bothers them and they hate themselves for it, and they're sad about the fact that they committed the sin and that they that they're going to be damned for all eternity and suffer for all eternity, but they would still do it again. In fact, I had a demon actually say that, so I said, commanded him, because I was trying to weaken this guy. I said, so let me get this straight. By the way, when I put it colloquially, in the interview, it's very structured. I'm saying, I command you to tell me X, Y, and Z. But I just said, so let me get this straight. You were created to have the beatific vision, yes. And you were created with this phenomenal perfections and the ability to see this, yes. And you saw that beauty in the first instance, yes. And you knew that if you were faithful, you would enjoy these things, yes. And you knew if you weren't faithful that you would suffer this and this, yeah. And you're suffering this now, yes. And you do it again, yes.
Most gear looks good until you actually start using it. Then you find out pretty quickly what holds up and what doesn't. That's why I keep coming back to Roka. These aren't just lifestyle sunglasses pretending to be performance gear. I've worn mine training, on the range, traveling, and outdoors for long days, and they stay locked in place the entire time. They're incredibly lightweight. The optics are razor sharp with zero glare. And you honestly forget you're even wearing them. But they still look clean enough to wear anywhere. Not overly tactical, just modern, functional design that works every day. Roka was born in Austin, Texas, and everything about them reflects that performance-first mindset. And if you need prescription lenses, they offer both sunglasses and eyeglasses options built to the same standard. And whether you're outfitting a law enforcement unit, a military team, or looking for corporate gifts that don't suck, Roka offers wholesale partnerships to make it happen. Roka isn't just eyewear, it's confidence you can wear every single day. They're the real deal. Ready to upgrade your eyewear? Check them out for yourself at Roka.com and use code SRS for 20% off site-wide at checkout. That's ROKA.com and use code SRS. Did God know that was going to happen? Did God know the fall would happen?
Yes, because he's outside of time.
Why did he allow the fall? Is the fall ultimately the test of the human being?
Well, we are all tested.
Because they're
as
the
well.
ones that influence our mind, correct?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Would you want to be around someone who you forced to love you?
No.
No. You want someone who wants to love you and chooses it on their own. It's the same with God. God created us with free will, and in order to have that free will, he allows us, a certain percentage of people, to fall, both human beings and angels, to fall and reject with him for the greater good, which is those who are faithful, who voluntarily chose to love him.
How did they gain access to our mind?
Okay, so the basic way it works is their very nature is designed, their wills are structured in such a way that they can move matter by their nature. And so that means that they can move things within us because our part of our brain, our intellect is material. Not all of it, but part of it is actually material. The brain, basically. And so they can actually act upon it.
Let's go back to human sacrifice a little bit. I mean, spent a couple days here. We talked about my past experiences. We've done some serious work here, and I've realized that the battle is in your mind for your soul.
That's right.
And, I mean, Christ himself was human sacrifice. Correct?
That's right.
And so, if the battle is within your mind, and demons have access to your mind, and angels have access to your mind, and I mean, suicide is a human sacrifice, abortion's a human sacrifice.
That's right,
Going to war is human sacrifice. Everything seems to come down to human sacrifice.
That's right.
Why is the human sacrifice so important? What does it represent? Why is it happening?
Thomas Aquinas makes an observation which is right along what you were saying. He said, the ultimate thing that God wants from every intelligent creature, so this would include angels and men, he said the ultimate thing that he wants from every intelligent creature is the sacrifice of his will, that is ours, to his will, to God's will. And the reason being has to do with this. So I'll explain the theological structure of it, and then I'm going to talk about a case I had that all revolved specifically around sacrifice. So in every sacrifice, there's three components. We learned, God taught us what sacrifice was in the Old Testament. So with the Jews, he said, this is exactly how you're supposed to do it. So in relationship to God, sacrifice which we offer to him has to follow a very distinctive structure, because if any one of these elements are missing, it's not a true sacrifice. And so he said, this is exactly how you're supposed to do it. Christ himself also said, when he did the Holy Sacrifice, first Mass, the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass on Monday, Thursday, he said, do this in commemoration of me. So he's being very specific about how they're supposed to do it, okay? And that's because if we don't, human beings are stupid, and we're going to mess it up. So the first component of a sacrifice is offertory. And basically what the offertory is, it's a setting apart of what I'm offering to God apart from me, and apart from profane or sacred or profane use. And that has two components. The first is there has to be some good that I have that I'm willing to be separated from. This was the line of demarcation between the sacrifice of Abel and the sacrifice of Cain. Abel gave the best that he had, and so he retained nothing for himself in that process. Whereas Cain kept the best for himself and gave God a sacrifice of something that was good, but not his best. And as a result of that, the second part of it is, so you have to be willing to be separated from the particular good, and you have to be willing to give it to God. in that very process, you are actually achieving the greater good. Okay, that is a key element of sacrifice. That in us being willing to be separated from the lesser good and giving it to God, a greater good is accomplished. And just in that process itself, we become better as human beings just in the offering of just in that offering of it to Him. And so, but there has to be that perfect willingness to detach from that lesser good in order for the greater good. So let me give you an example. The guy who goes off to war, the lesser good, ironically, is his own life. The greatest, he's willing to offer his life for what? For our good, the common good of the country. And in that process, the greater good that he achieves in that, the excellence that he achieves in that, is perfection and justice. And as a result of that, he gets honor. So that honor is one of the greatest things that human beings can achieve. It's better to die in honor than to die in dishonor, for example. And so he has to be willing to give up his own life for the sake of achieving the greater good. So that offertory component is really key. So you have to be willing to give the lesser good in order to achieve the greater good. That's the first element. The second thing is, there is the slaying of the victim. So if you look at Christ, let's back up. In Christ, his offertory was, not my will, but thine be done. So he did it at the Mount Olives. He was willing to offer up his own life for the sake of the greater good was our salvation. And so he was willing to offer that up. And so that's why he told God, not my will, but thine be done. Okay, so that's the offertory. Then there's the slaying of the victim. So in Christ's case, that's the passion and death of our Lord. And then the last part of it is the consummation. You actually, the victim has to be completely consumed in the process. Because if it's not, then there's still something we're retaining for ourselves. So the person has to be willing to completely die to themselves entirely. And how do we know that Christ did that? Well, he himself even said it right before he died, consummatum est, it is consummated. What did that actually mean? It meant that and the saint, Isaiah talks about this, St. Paul also talks about it, that the Messiah had to go through a series of sufferings in order to merit for us what was necessary for the perfection in all aspects of our lives. And so he was, for example, the reason he wore the crown of thorns is in order to undo Adam's sin in relationship to eating the fruit when he should not have, and then God gave him the punishment of you have to work in thorns and in pain. So Christ's suffering was to undo all of that. Okay, so the sacrifice then basically means that in the end, the reason God wants sacrifice from all of us is because he wants for us to achieve the greater good and not be satisfied with the lesser good. It's a call to the greater good. Okay. That being said, so I had this case where we kept revolving around Our Lady under the title of Mirror of Justice. Now, the reason that the Mirror of Justice, the reason that was so key and the reason it had a correlation to sacrifice is because of the fact that under the virtue of justice is the virtue of religion. So justice is where I render someone their due. So if I say, hey, go mow my lawn, I'll pay you $50. If you mow the lawn, in justice, I have to give you $50. Okay. Underneath that is the virtue of religion where we render God his due. Okay, what did God do for us? He creates us, he keeps us in being. Everything that we do, can do, all of that, he caused. And so literally there is nothing in us to which we don't owe back to him. So ultimately, we have to render ourselves in perfection before him. That's our goal. Okay. So, so that being the case, then, in relationship to justice, underneath justice is the virtue of religion. Underneath the virtue of religion are 4 acts. But one of those acts is to offer sacrifice to God, because that sacrifice is doing what? Giving the best that we have. So, as I mentioned, we have to render back to him everything, what is perfect. Well, what do? In order to show that as a sign, we render back to him the best in us, the thing that we love the most, we have to give back to him, okay? And so that's what he's ultimately looking for. Now, by the way, it doesn't mean that in that process, when we give it to him, that he doesn't reward us or that he doesn't take care of the thing that we offer to him, etc. It just means that that's what he wants us to give it to him, okay? In this case, so any time this demon would manifest when I was saying Mass, because we'd start the sessions with a Mass, anytime the demon would manifest, it's because God had told him he had to tell me something. So during this Mass, Beelzebub is the title, which is another name for Satan. He manifests during Mass. So I finish Mass knowing, okay, so then we start the sessions. As soon as Beelzebub manifested, I said to him, he told you you had to tell me something, didn't he? He was so angry that he could not even look at me. He was so angry. So then I said to him, shut up. You are not permitted to talk. Now, there's a reason I did that. One is because I don't want him telling me based upon when he thinks it's time. He has to realize I'm the guy in charge. And a lot of that is just to maintain the authority structure because they're constantly trying to get into the driver's seat. The second thing is it's normal spiritual warfare. This is a stout adversary. And so just as we would in normal warfare, you would just bomb them for a while first to soften up the situation. Then you'd send in the ground troops. He's the same way. If you try and ask him the question right off the bat, he's going to hold tight and you're not going to get anywhere. So you don't want to send the troops in first. You want to bomb him first. So what I did is I basically punished him for 45 minutes. And at the end of that 45 minutes, I said to him, you have something you have to tell me? And he said, he told me I have to tell you my nature. Now, what that means is we already knew what his assigned task was. It was to enlighten both Our Lady and our minds. Lucifer's original assigned task, the reason he was called Lucifer is because that comes from the Latin words lux ferre, which means to bear light. His job was to enlighten our minds, to get us to see the necessity and the good in offering sacrifice. That was his original assigned task. And so when he told me I have to tell you my nature, I said, let's hear it. Now, when they chose to reject their assigned task, you have to remember that's who they are. And that meant that in their choice, it was a perfect act of self-hatred. And they refused to do that function that God had told them to do. So what they chose then is the opposite of that assigned task. And so what he does is to thwart sacrifice. But this is where it becomes key. He just looks at me deadpan, which gives an indicator he's probably telling me the truth. And then as we started unpacking it later, theologically realized this is probably true. Because some people will say, well, demons lie all the time, but not always. Sometimes they're compelled to tell the truth. And he said, I convince people. So this is part of the cherubim. He's part of the cherubim, which is an intellectual function. He says, I convince people. So in us, it's an intellectual conviction that he puts in our minds. I convince people that they cannot be separated from the particular good. Okay. And so I stood back and I said, that's a whopper. Because I knew the structure of sacrifice. Remember, in offertory, you have to be willing to be separated from a particular good in order to give it to God. And that means when he convinces people, I can't be separated from this thing, that's how he subverts the remainder part of the sacrifice where we're willing to die to ourselves all the way to the end. And so he knew so I realized that's how he ended sacrifice. And then he just looks at me and says, it's how I took Adam and Eve out. It's how I'm taking your church out. It's how I took your government out. He said, it's at the root of every sin and every defect that every human being has. And later he said, it's the cause of mediocrity in every single human being, which is absolutely true. Because in virtue, when we're striving for virtue, which is the greater good, to perfect ourselves in some particular aspect, which is the greater good, we have to be willing to be separated from certain things. Just to take temperance. If I want to gain temperance, to master the virtue of fasting, for example, I have to be willing to put aside the lesser good of the pleasure I get out of food in order to achieve this greater good.
Makes sense. When do they gain access to our minds? We talk about the innocence of children and the pure love that they can give us.
Yeah.
And then at some point in time, everybody loses it.
That's right. It's ultimately when God allows it. So in the spiritual warfare, there's kind of a misunderstanding. People have this idea that demons get you just to maraud and do whatever they want. When St. Peter said, be sober and watchful, for the lion goes around seeking someone to devour. It doesn't mean he gets to hammer anybody he wants. It means he's constantly watching us. That's the going around. He's constantly watching to see where the weaknesses are and where he could take us out, and then he might test or probe, and if God lets him go in, then he goes in. But it means that the spiritual warfare, the entire battlefield is completely controlled by Christ. So even the demons can't do anything in relationship to us unless Christ gives them permission. So Christ is the one who allows them access at certain points. And the reason he allows us access to us is to test us. Will you sacrifice for me?
Is it through flaws in the world, like pornography?
Yeah.
I mean, kids are seeing pornography at age 8.
Yeah.
Probably earlier.
Yeah, that's it.
And
so
then,
he'll use
and
those as
then,
means.
and then that creates some type of a desire.
That's right. A disordered desire for it. Yeah. Part of it also has to do with the fact that demons can actually use that to inspire other people, to expose other people or kids or something like that to things that are evil. I've actually had a case where the demons would drive people around this woman in order to victimize her. So they can actually, that type of thing can happen. But it's not that common. Usually what they'll do is they'll use other people to introduce bad things into the person's life. And then the person, because of fallen human nature, we have a proclivity towards, like, let's just take pornography, we have a proclivity towards what we call concupiscence, which is a desire for pleasure that's immoderate and disordered. And so if we don't do things, and this is where parental formation and virtue, and getting them the sacraments and things like that aids the children in being faithful to that, so that they can actually combat that particular aspect of our fall or original sin that we kind of inherited as a result of that. Then what the demons do is they can play on that disordered inclination that we have and then start just driving it.
Do you think that successful exorcisms could be miracles? I mean, and the reason I ask is we talked about the last several weeks of my life and some of the things that I've experienced here that I don't want to go into yet, maybe at another time. But, you know, with what I did experience and how real it was, in the end, no matter how terrifying it was, it only strengthened my faith in Christ and God and the Holy Spirit immensely.
Yeah.
Immensely.
One of the things that you learn as an exorcist is what Christ said. You know, he said, he's talking to the apostles, count yourself as useless instruments. When you're, as an exorcist, you can pray and pray and pray until the cows come home, but if Christ doesn't step in and actually cause the liberation, nothing happens. Demons have actually said to me, he says, you can't make me do anything, which is actually true. As a human being, I can't make any demon do anything. But then my retort to them is, but he can. And so he uses us as instruments to basically afflict the demon, to punish him to a certain point, and then it's at that point that Christ steps in and Christ causes the liberation. So one time I was asked in a public venue, how many people have you liberated? And I said, none. But I've been in the presence of liberations where Christ, and I've done my work as an exorcist, and then Christ is the one who liberates. And so that liberation is both an act of mercy, but also one of the things that people very often don't quite understand about this, that possession is the worst thing. Actually, possession is not the worst thing. The worst thing is sin, mortal sin specifically, where you've committed such a grave sin that you're under the power of the demons from a legal point of view. Whereas possession is not necessarily the worst thing. In fact, possession, especially if it kind of protracts for any length of time, it actually, the people become holier through the battle, through the struggle. It's like a guy who goes off to, there's a big difference between a soldier who's never seen combat and one who has. And so this is whereas the guy who's seen the combat, he's much more fashioned, much more honed than the guy that maybe went through a lot of good training and could be a good soldier, but he just didn't have that opportunity. Well, it's the same thing here. When people go through just the brutal battle and that type of thing, the amount of sacrifice and self-denial and everything that they have to go through, and the virtue that they have to achieve in order to conquer this thing is quite admirable.
Do angels have access to our mind?
They do, God permitting.
What does that look like?
So the angels can do actually two things in relationship to us. The first is they can put an image in our imagination and even put a perspective on that image, just as the demons can do the same thing. So the demons can not only just put an image in your imagination, because we get these, you get thoughts, where did this come from, right? But they can even put a perspective on, like, this would be really good, right? And this is why sometimes people will come to me, like normal men, normal heterosexual men will come to me and they'll say, I had this bizarre experience where I was in this situation and I had this thought of pedophilia, and I had this kind of like inclination of the good. I said, well, that's not your junk. Right? That's not you. Demons can make anything look appealing. One exorcist contacted me recently because he had kind of gone through that type of thing. He was working with this one woman who, by any stretch of the imagination, was not good looking whatsoever. But when she walked in the door during one of the sessions, the demons skewed his perceptions and his in relationship to it. And he said he looked at her and he felt this inclination, like, she's just beautiful. And then he realized intellectually, he was like, that ain't true. And so he just stopped, did some prayers, broke it. And then when he looked at her again, he says, ugly as sin, right? So the point being is they can get that perspective. The angels can also do the same thing, because perceptions are either in congruity with reality or they're not. For example, let's just take transgenderism. People's perceptions about who they are may or may not be. If you're a normal heterosexual male, you say, hey, I'm a male, and this is then my perceptions are in congruity with reality. But if I'm some dude who thinks he's a woman, your perceptions aren't in congruity with reality. And so demons are constantly trying to put perspectives on it that either exaggerate or skew or falsify your perception of reality, whereas the good angels can actually do the opposite. They can put perspectives on the imagination, and then so that you get a greater perception of this is the truth of the matter. This is the reality of it. So one of the ways that you'll notice that is you'll get a bit of clarity in a situation. All of a sudden you'll see the perspective and like, okay, that's how this is actually done. The one thing that angels can do, which demons never do, is the angels can then, so there's 3 parts of our intellect. I'm not going to go into all 3, but there's 2 parts that I want to talk about. The first is the brain. That's the image part. And they can put a perspective. They can affect that. But then there's a part of our intellect that's entirely immaterial. And the reason we know that, for example, is when we die, then people in heaven, you hear about these with people who actually die and they actually go through a judgment and they might see Christ and that type of thing. Their intellect is functioning independently of their body. So we know there's a part of the intellect that's in part of that. There's also certain operations that we perform, like the ability to self-reflect upon ourselves. That we know that there's a part of our intellect that's purely immaterial, that can function independently of matter. This is why animals, even apes, don't have that same kind of self-reflection. Even when they see themselves in the mirror, it's kind of a fascination to them, but that's all at the level of the material. But as human beings, we have this. But the angels can actually, that immaterial part of it has the ability to make judgments about things, that something's right or true or that type of thing. How do we know that? We can have, I'll give you an example. A guy, his wife, when he first gets married, his perspective on her is, she's wonderful, she's lovely, I love her, she's such a great wife, she's beautiful, etc. And his intellectual judgment is the same as that. But then what can happen is that over the course of the marriage, bad things happen, and so his perspective on her begins to change, and then also does his judgment changes. But he can make a choice to change his judgment about that. Like if he starts thinking his wife is really bad and nasty, she may or may not be. He can start making a choice of, you know what, I'm not going to judge her that she's that bad. I think she's ultimately a woman of goodwill. It's just that I'm suffering in relationship to it. That means I got to shore up stuff on my part. So I can make a judgment, or I can make a choice to start looking at her, judging her differently. So that's one of the things. Okay, why is that important? Because angels can strengthen, it's called illumination. They can illuminate the mind, that immaterial part, so that when we make that act of judgment, we see it with much greater clarity and strength and depth. And so they can enlighten our minds. And so you can ask them, give me good images and then help me to see, help me to enlighten my mind in relationship to it. The fathers of the church actually say it was the angels who taught the Greeks philosophy, people like Aristotle and Plato, and that's why there's such a radical shift in their philosophy from the materialists to Plato and then to Aristotle.
What rank structure of the angels is putting images and clarity into our mind?
Primarily those of the rank of angel, the very lowest.
The guardian angel.
The guardian angels.
Archangels?
The archangels can, at times. They can also do it as well. It depends. There are certain people, according to the fathers of the church, that their stature in life is so important that God intends for their particular life that he actually not only that he actually will assign angels that are higher in the hierarchy, because what rank or how high in the hierarchy of angels your angel is directly proportional to how important you're supposed to be in human history, they say. And so, but there are certain people that God will actually assign an archangel to guard them, at least while they're fulfilling that role. So like people in positions of political power are generally considered that. Priests, bishops, that type of thing are given a guardian angel, an archangel, in order for relationship to that. If there's a particular function that they're going to play in relationship to us as human beings that's extremely important, they come from the rank of archangels. So Gabriel, Michael, Raphael were considered part of the archangel.
Let's take a quick break.
I'm excited to introduce to you the newest member of my family. We call him Stanley. We got Stanley this past Christmas, and pretty quickly my focus became making sure he was safe while still giving him the freedom to actually be a dog. I went looking for the top-rated GPS fence, the #1, and that's how I found Spot On. Stanley wears their Nova collar. With Spot On, I set up a GPS fence for Stanley right on my phone. No physical fence, no leash. I just walk my property line or draw it on the map, and that's the boundary the collar recognizes. I can create multiple fences, save them, and adjust them whenever I need to. So whether we're at home or traveling, Stanley always knows where his boundaries are. Another thing that stood out to me is these collars are designed right here in the USA and assembled in New Hampshire by a team that's been working with high-precision GPS technology for years. And you can tell a lot of attention went into making this thing reliable. The Nova collar uses a dual-band GPS system connected to more than 150 satellites, along with an antenna that's over 5 times larger than typical GPS fence collars. That keeps the boundary accurate, even around trees, terrain, and changing conditions. Spot On's true location technology has been independently tested and delivers 99.3% containment, which matters when you're trusting something with your dog's safety. It's incredibly durable, and on top of that, I can check his location in real time, send voice commands directly to the collar, and track his activity through the day. I use Spot On so Stanley gets the freedom to run and explore, and I get the peace of mind knowing he's safe. Let your dog roam with Spot On. Go to spotonfence.com/SRS and use code SRS for $50 off the Nova collar. That's spotonfence.com/SRS and use code SRS for $50 off.
All right, Father Ripperger, we got a hot question for you.
Okay.
So, I want to understand, why is Christianity the only religion in the world that is acceptable to disparage?
Well, Satan is the prince of this world, and it's pretty clear, at least it seems to me, but it's pretty clear, I think, to a lot of people that Satan and the demons are gaining much greater ascendancy over the world, and as they influence the world more and more, they will use people and they will use the things of this world in order to go after the one religion that they know is true. I often tell people that, in heaven, the demons actually, because the fact that Christ was going to become incarnate, and they actually watched Christ preach Revelation, they know it perfectly. And so as a result of that, and they know that he was the Messiah that was about to come, that he was going to be the one that was incarnate. So they know, not from faith anymore, because they lost their faith, but they know just by deductive reason that this is the true religion. All other religions don't have human beings who started them, whereas Christ, who's God, is the only one who started this religion, and they saw it. And so they know the rest of the other religions don't wash. And so you can, as the demons gain greater and greater control of the world, and as evil becomes more and more in place, there's two factors that come into play. The first is that demons move people to punish the Christians, which we saw in administrations even in this country where they were going after the Christians. And then you'd look at these people and you can tell these people were not living good lives, that were persecuting the Christians. So the demons will inspire the people to go after the Christians. We also see this in relationship to, certain religions attacking the Christians in different countries and that type of thing. So you see that. The other part of the dynamic has to do with the fact that St. Thomas talks about it in a question in the Summa, but there's a structure to how human beings go from pursuing and seeing the good to actually pursuing things that are evil. And it basically it's a process in which we have natural inclinations to things that are good. And so, for example, he gives the example, a guy recognizes that fornication's immoral, right? So he recognizes that. But then Bessie Sue walks in, and she's just gorgeous. And so he ends up falling with Bessie Sue, and St. Thomas says he thinks that it's, he kind of gives in, like it's okay in this one instance. And then, but he keeps hanging around Bessie Sue, so he keeps falling with her, and eventually he starts thinking that, well, fornication isn't wrong, And then, as he keeps fornicating, then what he actually thinks is that, well, no, fornication's actually a good thing. And then what happens next? Well, people who tell me fornication's bad, they're evil people because I know fornication's good. That is the exact progression we actually saw in this country. The greatest generation knew that fornication was immoral, but they started fornicating behind the scenes, and that's where fornication really started. And how do we know? Because when the hippie generation started the fornication openly, they didn't stop them. Because, hey, well, can't tell them we did that because we did it, right? So it goes from, no, they can't do it, but they fell from time to time, to, okay, now they're openly doing it. Then, by the time you get to the 80s and 90s, you should live with your girlfriend before you get married, which is a good thing, right? Because you should fornicate, find out if it's going to work. And then what's the last thing? Now you have people who, when you say, hey, you need to be chaste, guys need to stop doing this, they get attacked. And so, in addition to the demons driving this, now you have people whose lives are so disordered that what they see as good is bad, and what it is actually they see as bad is actually good. And so they see, and this is why we actually see Christ mention this. He says there will come a time when they will actually believe that by eradicating the people who follow him, they're actually doing the will of God.
I mean, it's interesting, I think all religions have been persecuted at one point or another through time.
Yeah.
If you talk bad about Islam, you're a bigot.
Right.
That's the same with multiple religions. If you talk about Judaism, you'll be ostracized from everything.
That's right.
It is the ultimate no-no.
Right.
Correct? And I don't understand. Why are Christians accepting this? In all the other religions, you see this righteous anger.
That's right.
If their religion or their people are disparaged.
Right.
With Christianity, and I'm guilty of it too. We let it slide. Why is that?
I think we let it slide because...
Are we conditioned?
Yes, I think that's it. We're conditioned to actually believe that when Christ said, turn the other cheek, that we just let people get away with whatever they want. And that's not actually the case. Basically, when he said you turn the other cheek, or, you have to forgive even those who do the bad things they give you. Yeah, you have to forgive them. But that doesn't mean that you extend the effects of that forgiveness to them, because that might be bad for them, St. Thomas says. And so, for example, he says, you should have charity. You should have love of God and love of neighbor for the sake of God for everybody. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily show the effects of that love to somebody, because then it would confirm them in their sin, and it's actually going to be bad for them. And so what's happened is Christians have gone to excess and just thinking, we just have to let people walk all over us. And that's not what Christ was saying. In fact, we have an obligation to fight for and to protect the glory of Christ himself, Christ the King. We have an obligation to fight for him. And the fact that we actually don't do that is based upon this effeminate unwillingness to battle, because we think it's we're just being charitable, or we're trying to be Christian and be merciful. Look, sometimes being merciful to somebody is actually bad for them. And so God is going to be merciful when we meet those conditions, always. But in relationship to us as human beings, we can't extend the mercy to people if they're doing evil and harm and offending God.
I mean, do you think this is just going to continue to get worse?
I do.
What can people do? I mean, in your mind or your idea, how do Christians, defend their faith? I mean, it's being ripped out of government. This country was founded on Christianity. It's being ripped out of schools. Many people are offended if you even bring it up in school. However, all these other ideologies, we're forced to comply with. LGBTQ,
right?
Islam, Judaism, all of them. They're all accepted except Christianity.
I think there's two things. The first thing is that a lot of Christians don't know their faith well. And so a lot of times they get mocked up, and a lot of times they don't fight. Or if they do fight, they fight badly because they don't know what they're doing. And they don't know how to disarm these people. I'm thinking of a particular bishop in his interview with Shapiro. I'm like, man, that was a missed opportunity, because he really could have set the record straight on a few things. So in addition to, they have to know what they're talking about and have to know this stuff, they also have to know the other religions to know where they're wrong, and to be able to see this. And also these other ideologies, they have to know why these things are actually bad. But then the second part of it is they just have to man up. They just basically have to say, okay, look at, there's two things that I think that they have to do in relationship to that is they have to be willing to suffer other people's, chaffing at them, etc. It reminds me of the allegory of the cave in Plato, where the people in the cave see these projections and think that's reality, and that's not even reality. Reality's outside. So the guy tries to drag him outside, and they're chaffing with him the whole way they're dragging him outside. And even if they get outside and they see the truth, they want to go back to this, right? It's the same kind of a thing that you see here. They're going to chaff at you. So you just have to stay the course and be willing to tell the truth. The second thing is we have to be willing to wield the axe. And by that, I mean we have to be willing to clear the deck. We have to start telling people, oh, I'm offended by that. I don't care. I'm more concerned that you know the truth than your emotions are hurt. We have to stop allowing people to follow their emotions. We have to stop following our own emotions in a relationship. We have to be willing to follow reason. And it doesn't mean you go around just being obnoxious, but it means that we have to be willing to fight with people. And if they just say, well, I'm offended, well, it's tough. That's just life. That's just reality. If you want to know the truth and you're willing to follow the truth. And the other side of it is the hypocrisy of it all. We have to recognize that when we give in to these people, we're giving into their hypocrisy. Because these people say, well, you're offensive to me. What you believe is offensive to me. Well, so is what you believe is offensive to me, and I think it's offensive to God. So we just have to say, okay, well, then what we have to do is we have to be willing to fight the truth, fight for the truth, be willing to take the beating for it in order to actually achieve what's... in order to clear the deck. Now, there's one reason why I tell people they have to be willing to do this. Have you ever noticed that nobody will talk about something, nobody will say anything until one guy gets up there and says, this is a bunch of bunk, and here's why.
He makes it safe for everybody else.
Yes, he breaks the ice.
I know a couple guys like that.
Yeah. But it breaks the ice, and then from there, it becomes a legitimate topic of discussion and people can actually start talking about it. But that's what we have to be willing to do. We have to be willing to break the ice or wield the axe in relationship to this, because it's once the truth gets out there, then it starts dispelling the darkness and people start seeing it, and people that are normally of goodwill will start signing off to it and say, yeah, I actually believe that. So, I mean, we actually see this even, just recently, just politically, you were never allowed to talk or mention Christianity or whatsoever, but now once it's talked about, now a lot of people are talking about it. So it's that one guy's got to break the ice, and some people have to be willing to be that one guy. But I tell guys, you may or may not be that guy. You have to make sure, A, that you have the virtue to do it to sustain the beating, and you also have to be the guy that knows what he's talking about, and don't presume you know. You got to really know.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So if you're willing to find the truth and follow the truth, then you should be willing to defend the truth.
That's right.
Break the ice no matter what the consequences.
That's right. Personal cost. To go back to one of the points is, you have to be willing to be separated from the lesser good in order to pursue the greater good. Guys have to be willing to take the beating, to be separated from the comfort and the adulation of other people. They have to be willing to be separated from that in order to pursue the good, regardless of the personal cost, which is the greater good.
Can we communicate with angels?
Yes, we can.
How would we do that?
So, I think before I answer that, let me answer how actual angels communicate amongst themselves. So, basically the way it works is because they don't have bodies, so we communicate because I think of something, I make a set of sounds, and then you hear the sounds, and then you interpret it based upon that. So it's a physical kind of communication. But because they don't have bodies, that means that their communication is purely intellectual. So it's a kind of a telepathy. And so the way that that works is one angel thinks of the other angel and thinks to himself, I want to communicate with that particular angel. Now, if you remember when I was saying earlier, God infuses the particular things as they're happening in the minds of the angels as they're happening. And so the angel that's infused in the other angel's mind, that angel so-and-so wants to communicate with you. Then if just like with us, we can either listen to somebody or not. He can, if he uses his will to turn towards that angel in his mind, then all that angel has to do is then he can start communicating what he wants to directly with them. Okay. So that basically means that they can use their mind to communicate with them. That's not any different from the very nature of prayer. In fact, with the definition of prayer is lifting the mind and heart to God. So we're directing our mind to him. And then when we do that, and then through our prayer that we communicate with him what we want, then when we do that, so obviously God knows all our thoughts anyway, but that's how we actually communicate with God, is just by directing our thoughts to him directly and communicating him with our thoughts. We can do it verbally as well.
Is verbally stronger than thought?
Yeah, it is in the sense that it's better for us, and so God tends to. It doesn't mean that God doesn't listen to the mental prayers, or even if you're talking to the angels.
I'm sorry, did you just say God does not listen to mental prayers?
No, he does.
He does.
He listens to them. But a lot of times, when we vocalize it, it helps our faculties become more focused, and it's a stronger prayer as a result. And so that's why a lot of times there's also certain kinds of prayers he just wants done vocally anyway. So. And because he made us as human beings and made us with the ability to communicate in that fashion, he also wants us to do that from time to time. On the other hand, there's also certain kinds of prayer that you want to be entirely mental. Okay. With the angels, then what we do is it's the same kind of a mechanism that they have. It's just that they under certain circumstances, they are permitted to communicate directly to us so that we hear their thoughts, but that's extremely rare. But if we direct our thoughts to them, the same mechanism occurs. So if I direct my thoughts, say, to my guardian angel and ask him to do something, in fact, I can tell a story behind that. But if I tell my guardian, or if I mentally think of my guardian angel and tell him, hey, I want you to do X, Y, or Z, then it's the same mechanism it was with the angels. That's infused in his mind that I want to talk to him. And then when he turns his mind to me, he hears my thoughts. Otherwise, he can't get access to my thoughts. He can cause things in me, but he can't read them. He can't know what I'm thinking unless either he's causing it or he can kind of decipher it. And he's probably thinking about X, like you can with your wife. You can figure out what she's thinking just by how she's reacting. But they can hear our thoughts in that actual process. So, to give an example, I had a case where the woman was possessed. I was in an airport. I was just about to get onto the plane. I was in line at the gate, and the woman I was working with calls me, and who was possessed, and she calls me and she says, "Hey, I'm pinned and I can't move," and so which they had done to her before. And then she hands the phone to the assistants, because anytime I do a session, there's always lay assistants that are present. And they said, yeah, they took the phone, they said, yeah, we can't budge her, we can't move her. And I'm like, well, I'm standing, I'm literally handing the stewardess or whatever, the gate woman, my boarding pass. So I just said, well, I can't do it now, but my flight's only about an hour, I'll call you in about an hour. And so then I hung up. And then I just mentally said to the guardian angel of my priesthood, go and help her. And then I just got onto the plane. An hour flight later, I get off the plane, and then I call her back and I said, you're still pinned? She says, yes, I'm still pinned. So then I just said a couple of binding prayers. Boom, the demon let loose for her right away, and then she just hangs up on me. And she says, I gotta go. She hangs up. About 5 minutes later, she calls back and she says, well, the reason I hung up is because I hadn't been to the bathroom in 5 hours. I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. And then she said, and by the way, did you send the guardian angel of your priesthood to me? And I said, yeah, how did you know? He said he appeared to me and held my hand during this whole episode. So the fact that I was able to mentally communicate that with my guardian angel is an indicator that they can hear our thoughts. And so we can ask them. The way our guardian angels work is their involvement in our life is based on two things. One, what God tells them to do. Hey, you need to do this, 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 or this, or I don't want you to protect them under this circumstance because I want them to go through this test, or I want them to suffer this for the sake of their soul, or whatever the case is. So God communicates that to them. But the primary way that they get involved in our lives is by our asking them. So the more we ask them, and the more we invoke their intercession and working in our lives, the more they become involved. And so sometimes people will say, well, my guardian angel doesn't do anything. I'm like, well, how much do you communicate with the guy? So if you communicate with them every single day, then you'll find that they'll be actually more involved in your life. Now, sometimes people will say, well, how do I know my guardian angel is even involved in my life? And it's very simple. Because they love God and they see his divine plan in relationship to us as human beings, they know that God's will is for us to live a normal life where we get to make free choices. That's what God wants for us. And that means that when our guardian angel is active, it means he's protecting us so that there's nothing trying to skew us or block us or do those things that would cause our bad choices, and so, or causing problems or difficulties in our lives. That's how you actually know. So in other words, the more natural our life seems, that's actually an indicator the more the angels are actually involved. Sometimes we'll get indication like, oh no, that was pretty. My guardian angel had to be protecting me in that particular set of situations, but that's not too common. But and the way we know that that's how they work is that demons are the opposite. Everything they do is contrary to our nature. It tries to darken our intellect, make it harder for us to make good choices. They mess with everything in our lives. They try and mess everything up rather than just letting us live a normal life.
Aging is inevitable. And if you're anything like me, you feel it a little more every year. Sore knees, tight joints, recovery takes longer than it used to. We can't stop the clock, but we can take care of ourselves. That's why I take Bubs Naturals collagen peptides. I mix it into my tea.
On the under $3 menu at McDonald's, a McChicken is $2. Because when you're craving a McChicken, you deserve a McChicken. And now, that McChicken is just $2.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
You say you'll never join the Navy. Never track storms in the Atlantic. Or skydive as part of your commute. Joining the Navy sounds crazy. Saying never actually is. Learn why at Navy.com. America's Navy, forged by the sea.
Aging is inevitable. And if you're anything like me, you feel it a little more every year. Sore knees, tight joints, recovery takes longer than it used to. We can't stop the clock, but we can take care of ourselves. That's why I take Bubs Naturals collagen peptides. I mix it into my tea every morning. It blends right in, no taste, no gritty texture. It's simple. I've been using Bubs collagen for a long time, and I genuinely notice the difference. My knees feel better, my skin looks better, I recover faster after workouts. I stick with Bubs because I trust the company. Their collagen is NSF certified for sport and sourced from grass-fed cattle. So it's clean, tested, and exactly what they say it is. And there's a bigger mission here. Bubs was founded in honor of Navy SEAL Glenn Bub Doherty. And 10% of all profits go towards helping veterans transition back to civilian life. So you're not just supporting your joints and recovery, you're supporting people who served this country. If you're ready to upgrade your daily routine with Bubs Naturals collagen, head to bubsnaturals.com/SRS and use code Sean for 20% off your order. Again, that's bubsnaturals.com/SRS and use code Sean for 20% off your order. Take care of your body. It's the only one you've got.
Do you think most human beings can differentiate the difference between a communication from an angel and a demon?
No. And the reason I say that is, I think there's some things that are pretty overt, and sometimes people know, okay, yeah, I think that was my guardian angel. I mean, I think that there's some on the more kind of extreme kind of levels. But I think that most people's even understanding of what is good and bad and how the angels even communicate with us and how the demons are involved in our life, there's so much confusion out there and so little understanding of this thing that people actually believe that, you know, oh, I had these amorous feelings for this person, it must be my guardian angel. No, demons can give you amorous feelings for people. So you have to be careful about that. Whereas the demons are never going to give you inclinations to want to love God more, to be more virtuous and things like that. So there are principles of discernment about how you can kind of sort these things out, but I don't think most people know them.
I think I had a encounter with an angel several years ago that I think that's what honestly led me to Christ.
Yeah.
And it is the only other time in my life where I really felt that there was a true battle for my soul happening in real time.
Right.
And it was at a very dark part of my life. And I basically come to the, I had this intuitive feeling in my heart that transgenderism was really bothering me at the time, and a lot of other things that were going on in the world, and I felt like maybe I was one of the only people speaking out about it, and it was just running rampant through the country. And so I had this internal battle in my head happening, and basically, it was me convincing myself that maybe I'm wrong here. You know, maybe I feel like I'm the only one speaking out against it. I feel like maybe I should just surrender. What's the point? Why fight this? Why speak out against it? Why do any of that? Because everybody appears to be for the celebrities that I respected, started speaking out for it. People I never would have expected speaking out about drag shows in front of toddlers, you know, and all these things. And these are people that I never would have expected do this. And then 1 week later, after they announce that they're all for this, they get a massive TV show deal.
Right.
You know, and so I think I know what that is. But at the time, I didn't see that deal. And so I felt like I was surrendering my soul to evil. And I was just like, why even? Who cares? Just give up. And I'd gotten to that point where I was almost there. We had walked into this, my wife and I had walked into this place we were vacationing in Sedona, Arizona. And we walked through the gate guards. You know, there was armed guards there that were arming the property, or guarding the property. And I'd been there for a week, I'd seen all these guys, a lot of them watch the show, they'd say hi, you know. And this was the last night I was there, and I walked through the gate, and there's this older gentleman in there. I think he said he was in Air Force Vietnam vet or something. And he started trying to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to him. I was, like I just told you, I was in a pretty dark place. And my wife stopped to talk to him. I'd never seen this guy. Been there for a week. I know I pay attention to security because of my background. I've never seen this guy at all, ever. And so I'm kind of posturing like I don't want to talk to him, looking at him over my shoulder.
Right now.
My wife stops. I turn and I square up to him. He immediately read my mind from front to back. And he said, I only really remember the first thing that he said because it scared me that he was inside my head. And he said, you don't need to worry about all this transgenderism going on with kids and just humans in general. That's not your battle. And then he went on and he started talking about, he said something about China, because China was really in my head, because that was when the spy balloons traversed the United States.
Right.
from Washington to Florida or South Carolina or wherever, and he started going into that, and I just looked at this guy in the eyes, and I was like,
yeah,
how are you inside of my head? And then a whole series of other events happened within minutes right after that, and that's basically what saved my soul and brought me to Christ.
Right.
And so what I want to ask you, is there a possibility that was my guardian angel, or maybe an archangel?
Yes, it can be, actually. Usually when you see those kinds of experiences which are not normally explained, one of the other things that you'll notice is you'll never be able to find that guy again.
Nope.
Yep, yeah. So that's that's actually one of the indicators. It's a very similar story to a priest who, the first pastor I was under, he had to go to anoint somebody in a building, and when he got there, this 6-foot, big, burly police officer was there and said, "You can't go in there, Father." And he just says, "Well, I have to. I've got to anoint." He says, "No, you can't go in. Leave." And so the priest walks around the corner and then says, "No, I got to go do it." So he turns back around. That police officer was nowhere to be found. He asked the police department. They'd never had any of that guy on there. But while he had walked around the corner and came back, 2 people were shot in the building. So that it's the same kind of a thing. They sometimes intervene in such dramatic ways in order to correct our path so that we don't end up going down the wrong path.
Why don't they do this more often? Why didn't they do this to the celebrity that I'm talking about?
Well, part of it has to do with...
Or maybe they did.
And maybe they did, yeah. I think some of it is also, it's how much involvement do we want to get them in our lives? I mean, do they, if the guardian angels appear to, would they even listen to them? So it's largely a matter of, as I mentioned, there's certain things that God tells them the guardian angels what they need to do, but God's will for us is for us to get them involved in our lives.
You know, I've also heard that if you're in the presence of an angel, it's terrifying would be the wrong word, but it is just an overpowering sensation that no human being could fathom. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there might be certain experiences of people historically that would account for those kinds of things. But generally speaking, angels aren't that overt, and they tend to be much more subtle, and they're in our presence. I mean, your guardian angel is watching you all the time, and to keep watch over you, and from time to time putting those thoughts in your mind and that type of thing to help guide you and that type of thing. So they have a lot of presence to us that's not going to be that dramatic.
Do you have any other examples of human beings encountering angels? I mean, we hear, you know, miraculous things with car wrecks. The car's been lifted off a body or saved them, or
yeah, I mean, I've heard those kinds of stories too. Another story that a priest friend of mine had a parishioner who, she was very elderly, and so there was a woman who was like 17 who would take her to mass every day, but the 17-year-old didn't have her driver's license, and the 80-year-old woman did. But she was very elderly, so they went to mass, and when they came back out, the elderly woman says, I just can't hardly move my arms. We're gonna have to pray to Saint Raphael to come and to drive the car for us. So the older woman literally said a prayer to Saint Raphael. The next thing you know, the car starts up, turns, and then goes all the way to their house, shuts off. There was, I'll admit that when I was younger, I was not the best kind of an individual. So one time I got pretty schnockered, right? So,
I can see that.
Yeah. So this was long before I got my act together, but I got pretty schnockered, and I was at this friend of mine's house, which lived about 20 miles from where my parents lived. And I mean, I was on the verge of blacking out. Got in my truck, started driving home. Then, I mean, all I remember is getting in the truck and telling him, no, I'm going to be all right. I'd start driving away. The next thing I remember is pulling into my house, my parents' house. I'm convinced that was my guardian angel, because there's no way. I mean, I literally blacked out. for that whole distance.
Wow.
Yeah. So they do. I mean, it tells you, that those of us who are trying to be good have had bad pasts sometimes too. But you just have to make sure that you're trying to do everything you can to get the angels, your guardian angels especially, but all the angels too, involved in your life. And there's not just our own personal guardian angels. There's guardian angels of families, towns, countries, churches, those types of things. And so corporations of a certain size, there's just, God created a number of angels. And so you can also pray to the guardian angels of your children. Hey, make sure that Johnny, clue Johnny in to do this, that, and everything. And that empowers them to actually be able to go and do that more frequently.
I mean, I have another example that just popped in my head. I mean, several years ago, over a decade ago, I had a suicide attempt. And same thing. I was hammered, blacked out. Yeah, don't remember how I got home. And I don't remember doing this. I reclined my seat in my garage with the car running.
Yeah.
And when I woke up in the morning, I woke up in my room. I lived in a townhome, and my entire townhome smelled like gasoline or some type of fuel. Woke up, ran downstairs, saw my pistol on the couch, a pistol that I don't carry every day. So I think maybe there was 2 attempts, or I was thinking about doing it twice.
Right.
Because I would have never accessed that pistol. Especially at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when I've just tied on.
Right.
I go out to my garage, and the door handle was like a little bit, like the door was a little hot to the touch, and I thought, holy shit, there's a fire in there or something. And I opened the door, but before I opened the door, I made the decision that if I open the door, I'm probably going to get blown to smithereens because all the fresh oxygen's going to rush in.
Oh, yeah.
Blow me away. So I made that 3 times. I think I made the decision to die, to kill myself. I went in the garage and I saw my Audi with the seat reclined back, and the car was still running, and it was so hot in there that the gas tank melted, and the gas tank was leaking. It was a slow drip, but it was dripping fire out of the gas tank onto the exhaust muffler.
Whoa.
Yeah, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. Do you think that was the guardian angel? Was that God that intervened?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll actually do that. So, yeah, they'll do it. Speaking of cars, I had an experience once while I was driving my truck to go out to the seminary to teach a course, and there was a car here and one here, and then I was behind it, and an ambulance comes on the other side, so this car right in the front just locks up the brakes and stops right in the middle. It's like a 40-mile-an-hour zone, just stops right in the middle. So the guy in front of him manages to stop before it's getting. But by the time I hit the brakes, I'm looking at the back of this guy's thing, and like, I am just gonna plow into the back of this guy's truck, right? And so, and I had my hands on there. It was not me. Literally, all of a sudden, the wheel just goes. Whoom. I'd go right between these posts, go right between the posts, and then the wheel just goes. It goes right between the posts, back down, around those two, and right back up onto the road, and I'm driving. I'm like, yeah, okay, I need hazardous duty pay. But the point being is that I think that was my guardian angel.
I mean, I even have more examples. I mean, I've stepped on unexploded HE, high explosive ordnance in Afghanistan that stepped on it.
Yeah.
I took a picture of it because I was like, holy shit, I should be dead.
Yeah.
I just stepped on UXO HEDP round.
Yeah.
And it didn't blow.
Right.
And there's example, my friend Eddie Penny. I mean, he had a intuitive thought injected into his brain on a target in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Something told, I can't remember the exact story, but something told him don't go over there. 2 seconds later, the entire building is leveled.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, in fact, that's part of the fact that they can put that kind of stuff into our imaginations. A lot of times we can talk about the fact that they actually can protect us spiritually, or protect us physically from these particular things that happen to us. They can also protect us spiritually by putting in our minds, you really probably should avoid that particular person. I'm not suggesting that people should just be, following their emotions and things like that, but the angels can actually protect us spiritually, even sometimes from ourselves, protect us from the wrong kinds of people. The other thing that I find fascinating about the angels, which is something which I actually use from time to time, is this is based upon the inversion of it. So I'll tell the inversion of it and then talk about why we know that angels do it. So demons can actually do this same mechanism, which is because they can affect our imagination. The demons can actually block people by affecting their imagination from focusing on things that you would normally think that they would focus on. This is how, like in our government, you can have people who are engaging in bad behavior for decades or even years, but just for decades. And nobody even pays hardly any attention to it. Like, why didn't anybody notice that? And that's because the demons can actually affect that. They said Hitler, he had this phenomenal ability to, at the very last second, shift and change his schedule and just say, okay, I'm not gonna, we're gonna go over here. All of a sudden, boom, they would change it. There was actually a president here in the United States in recent past, they said had the same phenomenon, that he would just all of a sudden change his schedule out of the blue, and then they would find out there was an attempt on his life that was going to occur.
Wow.
So the demons can actually influence people that way too, but they can also block our ability to focus on stuff that, why hasn't anybody talked about this particular kind of fraud in the government when it was this rampant, that type of thing. And so they can actually do that. Well, the same kind of mechanism, so they can keep people hidden. And so the same kind of mechanism the actual angels can do. So one of the things I often recommend to people who are really trying to really forge the good and do a lot of good in the culture and that type of thing is ask either Our Lady to, send her angels down, but ask your guardian angel or the angels to keep you hidden from the wrong kinds of people. And it has a phenomenally good effect. And it'll keep, so what'll happen is and it's even a mechanism I teach. Sometimes I'll teach people who run major corporations. And they'll complain to me like, we just keep getting the wrong kinds of people in, they keep coming in and they cause all this damage. I said, well, ask the angels to keep your corporation hidden from them. But at the same time, ask them to keep it known to the people that need to know. So they can actually affect other people to where they don't, decide, I'm going to go work for Sean, and then they come in and cause all this damage. You can actually keep those kinds of people away. Or the types of people that, that could cause you harm or whatever the case is, just ask Our Lady to keep me hidden from them. I do it in relationship to certain people, just to keep me hidden so that I don't have this. And Our Lady's been very good to that. But the angels are the ones that kind of execute that process.
With summer travel, even learning a few real phrases can completely change the experience. You're not just pointing at a menu or hoping someone speaks English. You can order food, ask for directions, and actually connect with people a little more when you're there. That's why I like Babbel. Me and the team have been using it for travel because it's built for real-life conversations, not just memorizing random vocabulary or staring at grammar charts. The lessons are quick, practical, and built by more than 200 language experts. So you're learning phrases you'll actually use. And even just 10 minutes a day with Babbel can help you start having real conversations in as little as 3 weeks. They've got interactive dialogue, personalized reviews, and even podcasts. So you can work it into your day whether you're traveling, driving, or just trying to get a few minutes in before bed. Babbel's award-winning app has sold over 25 million subscriptions, and it's backed by a 14-day money-back guarantee. If you've got summer travel coming up, now's the time to start so you can actually use what you learn on the trip. Right now, Babbel is offering listeners up to 60% off. Go to babbel.com/SRS. That's Babbel, BABBEL.com/SRS for up to 60% off. Rules and restrictions may apply. Do we have any idea of what their realm looks like? I mean, they seem, the majority, I mean, almost all the time invisible to us. I mean, you know, so do we have any idea of what their realm, what their perspective of this realm looks like? And how do they transfer realms? Are they in another dimension that coincides with this dimension? I mean, if you're driving down the road and your car goes off and an invisible thing throws your car back on the road. I mean, are they
well, a dimension
transferring from one dimension to the other in a split second? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Like, they're not in another dimension because a dimension is a physical thing, and they're not physical. They don't have bodies. They can actually move physical things just with their minds. You know, so it's a form of telekinesis type of thing, but they can have it. And so, in fact, it's actually, there's a lot of theological speculation by certain theologians throughout history that originally Adam and Eve had the power of telekinesis, and then God restricted it to our bodies. Because when we make a choice, I can make a choice to think about something different, and that means that I'm using my will, which is an immaterial thing, to move my body, right? So we do have some ability to do that, and they also think that the saints have that capacity as well to do that, God permitting. Okay, so all that being said, but basically what it means is that because they don't have any bodies, but in their minds they see all the stuff that's actually going on. Now their experience of seeing, see, for us, physical things have a much stronger impression on us because that's the way God just kind of designed us. Whereas with the angels, when they think of a concept, it's far more intense of an experience than we get even of a physical thing. And so they see those things with great clarity, and then their wills, they can actually move. Then if they want to affect us in some way and God permits it, just by their wills, they can actually move it. It's like a form of telekinesis, but they can just move it, God permitting, so they can apply their will to actually move those particular things.
Can they see our demons?
Yes, they see everything that is going on in the spiritual world.
Can the demons see them?
Yes, they can.
Do they communicate?
Not usually, although once in a while they will. And it's usually a one-way form of communication, where the angels are telling the demons, knock it off, or you can't do this, you can't do that. Because even if the other angels, the lower angels know there's no point in trying to communicate with them because they're not going to listen because they're following the will of God. The only time that seems to be different is in cases that protract of possession. There's 6 stages of liberation. In stage 6 is actual liberation. Stage 5 is called the ascendancy phase, and there's a part of that phase. It's in 4 parts, and there's a part of that phase called the saints phase. And basically, there's the saints phase, so that sometimes the saints will actually show up. I don't see them, but the person who's possessed sees the saints, etc. But then there's another part called the bargaining phase, and basically that's just before the saints phase. And the bargaining phase is the demons know they're losing. They've lost. And so from time to time, the person who's possessed will actually see the interchange. And so it's very similar to the kind of like the interchange that Pope Leo saw of Satan approaching God and asking him, give me 100 years, right? So it's a bargaining kind of a thing. So the demon will actually approach Christ because they know he's the guy that's got all the power. He said it, all power on heaven and earth is given to me. So they know he's the guy. They can't do anything without asking. So they'll actually go to him and ask, give me this power, give me this permission to do X, Y, and Z. And he most always says no, but the person who's possessed will see that interchange. So that's about the only time that I've recognized that they'll communicate with, either the saints or Christ or whatever the case is. That's when that communication goes that direction. But otherwise, it's just a one-way communication.
Okay. I've never really realized the power of prayer until the last couple of weeks when
I did another episode on this, but we've been talking about it all week. My last psychedelic experience, and I said some of your deliverance prayers and had intuitive experiences of demons leaving my body. And some of the things we experienced yesterday here were extremely profound. What is the power of the rosary?
Well, historically, St. Padre Pio used to refer to it as the weapon, especially in spiritual warfare. But it was basically, the rosary was a sacramental that was given to a particular saint in order
I'm gonna take a break.
That those who would pray the rosary, that specific structure of prayer that God wanted people to start saying, was given by Our Lady to a particular saint, was given to them as a way of, if you continually say this, then it's going to bring about the intention for which you're going to say the rosary. For example, the Battle of Lepanto. So the Turks are there. They're basically the Christians, the Catholics are outnumbered significantly in Lepanto, and so at a certain point, Pius V orders that all the Christians start praying the rosary for the intention of the Christians to conquer the Turks. And you have to remember, it was like 10 or 20 to 1, kind of outnumber kind of a situation. So they literally, a large part of Christendom, and even the people, the soldiers at Lepanto started saying the rosary, asking Our Lady to invoking her, intercession to conquer the Turks. They just destroyed the Turks in the process. So the point being is that the rosary is one of those particular things that a number of the saints have said. For example, if there's a particular vice you're trying to overcome in your life, start saying the rosary every day for that intention, and pretty quick it'll go away. And so it's one of those sacramentals that was given to the church, which has a pretty profound impact.
So when you say the rosary, should there always be an intention behind it, or
you want to offer it up for some intention. And like, for example, given your state in life, you can offer it up for the spiritual well-being of your wife, your children, or whatever, for your protection, or if there's particular problems you're dealing with in your corporation, or whatever the case is, you can pray for Our Lady to start ameliorating those, or to for the rosary for that intention.
What are some other tools, tools that people can use for spiritual warfare? I mean, we talked about at the beginning of this. We brought up the UFO disclosure, alien narrative, and the possibility that the U.S. government is trying to disprove in the Bible and steal faith from people and destroy Christianity. What are, and we talked a lot about the battle in your mind and for your soul. I mean, what are things that people can do outside of voting?
Voting, yeah. As some friends of mine always say, which we've kind of seen even in this last election and the elections going forward, is, because, I think people should vote, but this idea that you're going to solve the problem by voting, so their phrase is, we just have to vote harder, right? Well, that's just not going to ultimately change, because this is a spiritual battle. The main thing for people to remember, at least so there's different categories of things that people can actually make use of, but the primary thing is prayer. And Christ actually laid out, he said it in such a way so that to explicate a very specific kind of principle or a mechanics of how the spiritual life actually works. So he says, knock and it will be opened. So there's two things. You have to do something if you want the door opened. He's not normally just going to, once in a while he might open the door, but eventually you've got to open up, you've got to do your part for the door to actually open. And so the first is knock and the door will be opened, asking you shall receive. So there's two. One, you got to do something, but the second thing is what you ask for is what you're going to get. So that principle, the mechanics of God is sitting there listening all the time to everything that you're doing, everything, because he sees it, and so he's listening. And I've actually had that experience even in session where
2.5 hours, guys. Have a good night.